Okay. Are you going to be visible, Drayden? Hello?
Okay, can you hear me?
I
Oh,
can
there we go.
I can hear you.
All right, cool.
Can you make your screen squarer?
Squarer?
Yeah.
Don't know what you mean.
Well, it's portrait. It's like a phone screen. There you go. It's a little blurry too.
Let me clean my camera lens real
Yeah,
quick
it's
here.
yeah. And you probably want to be a little bit closer to your face. Um,
How's
th-
that?
that's better. If you want to grab my tripod that's on my bed, you can clip your phone into it and raise it up so you don't have to look down.
Oh, I got you. I'll just find a different place for it, dude.
Might want to do it. Might want to do it at the kitchen table. Just a thought.
Yep. All right, let me go check this out here.
Not working at all? Are you sitting in some computer and so?
Hold on. I have a workaround, but let me.
Yeah, we'll take a few minutes to everybody to file in and get settled and debugged. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'm gonna drop out and come back in. I'll be back.
Okay. Good afternoon, Julie. Are you connected to Mark?
Yes, Mark is here with me.
Oh, very good.
Hi.
So we are somewhat remote and
Oh, there you
sitting out, dining outside at the moment, but definitely
Perfect.
wanted to come in. So
Wonderful. Nice to see you, Mark, after
nice
all
to
these
see you as
months.
well. Thank you.
You bet.
It's
I'm
Julie. Yep.
hi Julie, Jay Hoops,
Hi.
Desmond's older brother. Did you kill him this year out there on the track, Mark?
Well, I've been kind of having an up and down year health wise myself. So it's I've made a couple of events and did pretty well in Vegas, but had to skip out on the last couple of events because I had a kind of a stint in the hospital, and so but on the mend now and feeling better a little each day. So hope to get back out there soon.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
But still driving the same car, the Hyundai
The
Elantra that he
Hyundai?
had. I'm still soldiering on with it in kind of in his honor, and well, just because yeah, I still have things to prove with it. Hopefully that I can perform well with it. So, but I know it was a car that he just loved and thought was unique and quirky, and so sticking with it.
Right, and you got the six-speed manual, and he got the automatic, as I
Other way
recall.
around, actually.
Other,
He had the 6-speed manual, and I have the
I
dual clutch.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we went back and forth on what we thought was best, and so I bought my car long before he bought his, and then he's telling me he's thinking about getting a manual, and I'm like, but Des, I can save you 35 grand. Just drive mine. It's right here. But he did his own thing, and so he wanted, and he just swore up and down the manual was faster, and but
Oh,
it is what it
interesting.
is, and we had a good time with it. So
Interesting. Well, I'm glad that you're still in that same vehicle.
yep.
I don't think he owned his long enough to really flesh it out. Um,
No,
you know,
no, most of his stuff was not owned very long. Let's put it that way.
no, he
He
was
would go
the
through cars, pretty quickly. And I mean, this wasn't his only Hyundai. I mean, he had a Hyundai Veloster about 3 years ago that we raced. He only had that one for like 6 months, and we met. this was COVID year. We met down in Texas and ran a big event down there with the Veloster that he had, and
Gotcha.
that kind of got us thinking down that Hyundai path. And then when they came out with the Elantra, kind of the rest is history. It was definitely interesting for sure.
It's an interesting choice for an autocross car. It looks too big
Yeah.
and unwieldy to my eyes. And I drive a '89 Honda CRX SI.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. Yeah,
Little rocket. And
yeah, it's it's an interesting car. I mean, I like it because it does all things so well. It's a great daily driver. You know, it gets decent gas mileage. It's fun. It's quick. Handles well. Got nice space. You know, good comfort. Anyway, it just so happens that it's a pretty good autocross car too. And yeah, it's not quite as sexy. You know, telling somebody that you don't know what kind of car you race when you
a
say you race
Hyundai,
a
a sedan,
it's not
huh?
quite as you know, sexy as a Corvette or a Porsche or something like that. But
Not to interrupt, Mark, but we have 3 minutes until we need to begin this.
yep.
And I'm going to just start welcoming people and making sure
Yeah.
everybody's comfortable with their audio and video settings. Judy, I see you all, Patrice, Jason. If you can turn your camera sideways to landscape, we'll get a full view. There we go. Perfect. I can't hear you guys though.
You can't hear us?
Now I can. Yes.
Okay,
Thank
there
you.
we go.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Jay, this is Callie, this is Adam's wife.
Hi.
Callie, nice to meet you.
And
Nice
this,
to meet you. Is that with the little Charlie girl?
that's Charlie.
Charlie, first time for everything. Nice to meet you both. Wonderful.
I'm excited to meet you.
And where is Mr. Adam?
He
He's
didn't,
working.
he didn't say no to Mayo, Jay.
He's
Oh,
working.
he's the chef's lot. He has to cook.
Yeah.
No, he's with his first wife today.
Yeah.
Which is work, so.
Well, I'm going to go around real quickly and just make sure everybody's comfortable. We have Mary Engel and her husband,
Nolan Hester.
Nolan. That's correct. Thank you for jogging my memory. I have pages of notes with all of my interactions with people. So the names, Margaret, good to see you again.
Hey, Jay.
How's that Maverick working out?
I'm sorry.
How is that Maverick working out?
Hey, you know who it's named after, don't you?
Uh,
It's great.
I want you to tell that story when we go around. That would be wonderful.
I will.
Drayton, you're good. I hear you. I see you.
Oh, unfortunately, yeah.
Liz Weston, good to see you, dear. How are your post-retirement travels treating you?
Well, I'm here from Paris, so really, really well.
What a world. Here we are. I'm in outer Montana. Drayton is upstairs in his own room at our house here. Kathy Henson, welcome, dear. We will keep going. Chuck, great to see you, sir. Wonderful.
Thanks for organizing this.
My pleasure. I've been looking forward to it for the longest time, and I figured Cinco de Mayo or bust. We had to get this done. We have Garrett Cogburn. I don't see Garrett. Mark and Julie Scroggs. Don Kirkpatrick. Good afternoon, Don. We will be going around the room with an introduction real quickly. We've got 13, 14. The numbers keep going up. Bev O'Shea is with us. Karen Aho and Rick Vanderknife, whose videos I don't see Rick, don't see Karen, don't see Bev. There we are. Good afternoon, Rick.
Howdy.
Howdy. Jay Toups here, Desmond's brother, older brother. Drayton Toups is on the call, who is Desmond's twin brother. Of course, he wears a different disguise. My younger sister Patrice is in the upper left of the screen. I don't know if these tiles are the same for everyone. Judy, is the tile Judy in the upper left? for everyone?
Yeah.
She's lower for me, but
Well, okay, so they're not the same. Bev, good afternoon, dear. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
We have 17. They're stacking up over O'Hare. Oh boy. I've never run a Zoom meeting more than one or two people, so this is interesting.
I have had hosted over 100 people at one time.
It's a whole different thing than one-to-one, no doubt.
Absolutely.
I see we have Jeff Bounds on the call.
Hey,
I'm
Jeff.
here.
Good
Hey, guys.
good afternoon, Jeff. And Ron Bauer. Um, Ron, it looks like your audio is muted. And Kim Lowe, good to see you. Good afternoon.
Hello. Liz.
Wonderful. I think we're 18. Oh, well, I think it's probably appropriate everyone go around the room with a brief introduction. And what was your tether to this enigmatic man who came into all our lives either a long time ago or in recent vintage? What was that tether? How did you get to know my brother? And why are you here today? That would be brief. If we can do this all in like 1 minute, then we can go around again, a little bit more long form. So,
Hey, Jay, I'll
yeah.
start because I've had the honor of knowing that man longer than anybody else had because I spent 9 months in the moon with him.
That would.
I'm Drayden. I'm Desmond's twin brother. We're about as diametrically opposed as two individuals can get. But we're still blood. Living up here in Montana with Jay. I was hoping to get close to Des, but he decided to bail before I made it up here. I'm so glad for the turnout. The friends that he had were of the highest caliber, and I'm so glad that you guys could be with us today.
Wonderful. And
I'm done.
let's go. My upper left is Sue Jepson. Sue, good to see you, dear.
Hi.
Oh.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. I met Des when I went to work in Albuquerque at the Albuquerque Journal. So 88, 87, something like that.
88.
And didn't you also go to Alaska and work with him at Daily News up there?
I did. He
Aha.
blazed the trail, and then Nolan and Mary followed, and then I followed, and then Nolan and Mary left, and then Des left, and I stuck it out for a while. But we always kept in touch, and wound up back in. We both wound up in Portland after many years.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. Mary and Nolan?
Well, as Sue said, we met Des first at the Albuquerque Journal, although to tell you the truth, I think Nolan knew him better at the Journal. My first real memory of Des is when I got to Anchorage and I went up for an interview, and he very generously was going to show me around Anchorage. And I remember him showing up early in the morning, and he had a can of Coca-Cola in one hand and a cigarette in the other. And I thought, oh man, I am in for some ride now. And he took me all over Anchorage, and then we wound up, knowing him through in Seattle as well. When we got here, he was here to welcome us.
And I first met Des at the Albuquerque Journal because I was working the city desk on Saturday night, and he was on the copy desk, and he used to give me a hard time about one of our reporters. And I kind of gave him a hard time back, and we were friends ever after.
Wonderful. Thank you. Margaret.
I think I'm unmuted now. I met Des through Sue. Actually, I'm a current journalist, and Des was a recovering journalist, newspaper journalist. So we had a lot to talk about, and we became good friends, especially during the pandemic because we were pandemic buddies, which I will talk about later. But one of the signature things that Des is known for is his love of cars and his generosity. And my car got stolen outside my house a few years ago. And, you know, it was a 25-year-old car. And, you know, I was going to drive it until it died. I think it offended Des because it was in such bad shape. So this was an opportunity for him. And he did not disappoint. I got dozens of emails and about what I should buy, but he finally found the car for me. So that's a story to come.
Oh, very good. I look forward to it. Having seen that car firsthand, I look forward to it. Liz.
Hey, everybody. I worked with although we both worked at the Anchorage Daily News, we didn't overlap, or if we did, it was like by a day. So I actually met him and worked with him first at MSN and more recently at NerdWallet.
Wonderful. And your retirement letter you wrote that you tipped your hat to Des was wonderful. I'd like to add that link to his memorial page. And we can do that offline, or I will be in touch offline. Kathy.
Yeah, I'm another NerdWallet connection. That's where I met Des, and I started out there as a copy editor, and I was working closely with just a couple verticals, editing groups, and Des was one of the editors I worked with, and he kept saying, "Don't you want to be an assistant, a signing editor?" And I kept saying, "Not really, not so much. No, thank you, not so much." And he and some others finally wore me down, and I said, "Okay, I'll do it." But I want to work directly with Des because I could tell that he knew a ton about SEO and a lot of the things I knew nothing about. And so I moved over to his team and we worked together for several years, and he was tireless in trying to get me to understand the finer points of SEO with varying success.
Oh, he was certainly very analytical in ways that are not a strong suit in our family. He was the more meticulous, or maybe the most meticulous numerical guy. Always was. Chuck, on to you, sir.
Yeah, so I actually was responsible for bringing Desmond to the Albuquerque Journal. I met him in 1987 in Colorado Springs. He was rooming with a college friend of mine, and Desmond being Desmond, he was not the least bit shy about venting constantly about how much he hated it there. So I was like, well, why don't you come work for us in Albuquerque? And he's like, yeah, I will. And he got hired like within a week of sending his resume. And he was, amongst his many other great qualities, he was a hell of a good editor. He was very critical, but he had a really good eye for what made a good story. And he was very sparing with praise, but if he told you that he really liked your story, that really meant a lot. And then, of course, we bonded over our shared love of books. As you can tell, I read a lot of books behind me, and we just would spend a lot of time discussing literature.
And your article about him, which is on our blog page for Des, is just a wonderful read. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to read it or will read it.
Yeah, thanks. I've actually heard from dozens of people, including many total strangers, since I put it on Medium, just saying, thank you for remembering him like that.
Oh yes, I'm slugging my way through Ministry for the Future right now, and that was Desmond's last recommend to me on a reading list. Anyway, Don Kirkpatrick, good to see you, sir.
Hi, thanks. So I met Des sometime in the second half of the 1990s when he came to work at the Seattle Times. And then after that, he went to MSN Money, and then I went to MSN Money. And then after that, I went to NerdWallet, and then he came to NerdWallet. So we worked together at 3 different places over the years, over was that 20 years, 20 plus years. At one point, he was my manager. At another point, I was his manager. So, and it was always interesting person to work with for sure.
And all of that time was in the post-journalism world of Des. It was more in the digital realm, or all in the digital realm.
We worked more closely at MSN Money and at NerdWallet than we had at the Seattle Times, but we did work alongside each other a little bit at the Seattle Times as editors.
Oh, prior to the MSN Money.
Right.
Gotcha. I always wondered that hat trick that he made that jump from journalism to the sector that I was in, which was IT, and hit the ground running and did well from the very beginning. It was wonderful.
Well, the journalism skills really make that transition because you're still using journalism even when you're at a place like MSN or at NerdWallet.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's a lot of new skills that you have to learn as well too.
Yeah, and they're not really part and parcel of the binary digital programmer geek mind. So I think that's always been healthy for tech to bring in people from the humanities in general, the literary arts and so forth. Rick Vanderknife, your turn, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have a similar trajectory to Don. I worked with Des beginning in 2004 at MSN Money. He was my manager when I came in as a contractor. We were both early. We started our work days early, so we used to have head down to the cafeteria and have a bowl of oatmeal just about every day for about the 10 years I was at MSN, or that we overlapped at MSN, and then we worked together at NerdWallet. And like Don, he was my manager at one point. I was his manager at one point. We kind of swapped off. The last time I saw him was about a week before he passed. I went down to we met up in Portland and spent the afternoon together. So yeah, he's a very important guy to me. Probably the smartest guy I've ever worked with all due respect to everybody on the phone on the call here. Just in terms of analytics, I would meet with him through the NerdWallet years, every 8 o'clock every morning, whether we were working together on the same team every Monday morning, and he'd have a million ideas for things I should do on the projects I was working on. So
yeah, he was certainly resourceful. He had a deep reservoir of, well, I've never thought about that. Thank you for thinking about this. He was pretty inexhaustible in that regard.
His mind moved a lot faster than mine does, for sure.
Yeah, mental horsepower, but the redeeming thing about Desmond's mental horsepower is he never revved it unnecessarily. He was very judicious in how he used his intelligence, and a softer, kinder guy probably doesn't exist. Anyway, Karen, aho.
Hi, I agree with the smartest guy in the room in my sphere, my world of editors, also the smartest. My trajectory is about the same as Liz Weston's. We both worked at the Anchorage Daily News, but we did not overlap. But somebody who worked with both of us was able to make the connection, and I started working for him as a freelance writer at MSN Money, and then worked for him at various places for the next 16 years. We were working on 2 projects together when he died.
Wow. Quite a long history. You may have the longest history, or one of the longest histories with him of anyone on the call, but maybe not. Sue probably has the longest relationship with Des outside of people.
I think Chuck probably outranks me on that one.
Oh, okay, very good. Great to know. Kim,
I wish I could have hung out with Des in the womb. I'm sure it would have been a lot of fun, but
Always a long distance because you're in Amherst, Mass, right?
I'm in Mass, yes.
Gotcha. Okay, onward. Kim Lowe. Good to see you, Kim.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. So I overlapped with Des at MSN also, but I didn't know him. I worked on a completely different team. I knew who he was, but I don't know that I ever actually met with him at MSN. But he was my first manager when I joined NerdWallet. And I'll be quite honest, Des and I did not click at first. We had pretty different approaches, and I just like couldn't understand like what was going on with him. But after a while, and after talking with people who did kind of understand how he operated, it clicked for me, and I got it, and I realized like, oh yeah, I do have a lot to learn from this guy. And I've had a lot of great managers over the years, but yeah, I'll chime in with others. Like, he is probably the manager who told me what I needed to do and learn, and he was the most frank about I guess my weaknesses and where I needed to grow, and I appreciated that very much.
Oh, wonderful. That's a great perspective. Um, thank you. Garrett Cogburn. Garrett has I'm going to set you up, Garrett. Pardon me. Garrett had the pleasure and the the honor of being the last person to ever see Desmond alive. Garrett rode in the ambulance from the point of the crash. And his story it's a very poignant one, and maybe we'll do that on the second round. But until then, how's that that red Porsche treating you, Garrett?
It's been pretty good so far. So, but yeah, I got to know Des. I guess through a totally different circle than a lot of people here. Through our cars and a love of autocross. When I first started going to Northwest Region SCCA events, I really wondered who was this guy that showed up with a different car 4 times a year. As Des was certainly known for, cycling through cars, trying to find, the dark horse car for a given class or what have you. But it was really the last few years that I got to know Des really closely and really spent a lot of time with him at our local events, as well as at national events, traveling across the country, events in California, the national championships in Lincoln, Nebraska, and just really appreciated his, friendship and camaraderie. His kindness was exceptional, and I think he always had he was always very good at delivering feedback, even in driving, in a very kind way. If you did need to improve, he would tell you as much. But to kind of echo some of the other comments, if you had a really good day, he would always notice and he would always say something.
Oh, he wasn't shy about feedbacking, no doubt. The family is better for all of Desmond's his prodigal output and his wit and sense of timing were always impeccable. So we keep going, and my screen just jumbled. Everybody, who's next?
Go ahead, Jeff. Jeff's been popping up on everybody's screen. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff Bounds.
Oh, yeah. So I've known Des since about 73. We were in junior high school together. And it's funny, he back then, we were both sort of misfits, I think. Knowing who he grew into, it's even funnier. But even at the time, I remember, you meet lots of new people when you go from like one school to another. So started at this different school, and Des was this funny guy who he loved cars even then as a seventh grader. So, every conversation was about cars, and his dad was a Ford guy and my dad was a GM guy. So we would argue back and forth. And I remember Des was the guy that you could argue about anything with, but he always brought intelligent arguments to the table. So he's like, you could argue and you might not agree, but you'd think in the back, you'd say he made some really good points, or maybe secretly you'd think he might be right about Fords. I don't know. So anyway, a few years later, I convinced my dad to get a Ford Taurus. And I remember telling Des, I said, I thought, I've got him this time. It's like, so after all these arguments we've had over the years, I convinced my dad to get a Ford. He looked at me and he said, yeah, my dad's with Hondas now. He doesn't do Fords anymore. So, oh, man, you can never get this guy. He's unbelievable.
Well, Jeff, he did still preach the gospel of Fords. When I was looking for a car, he just kept saying, don't get a Japanese car, get a Ford. They're really good. So he was still a Ford guy, at least in the.
It had a special place in his heart for sure.
Yeah.
No question about that.
I know that he had a series of Mustangs. I remember I moved back from Europe in '83 and lived with him while he was at the University of Southern Mississippi, and he was driving a late model red Mustang. He didn't continue with his schooling because he got hired for his first journalism job before he even graduated. So I had to move out and find a different place, and he beat-feedered it back down to the coast of Mississippi and launched into his career. Anyway, Jeff.
You just reminded me of something. That guy, Des, could defend anything. He drove, I think his early cars when he was in high school, he had a lot of accidents. I remember he had a good sense of humor about it. I don't know that his dad had a sense of humor about it, but he had a good sense about it. So he ended up, at one point he had, I think, a Pinto and then a Mustang Mach 2, whatever, the Mustang 2. But anyway, a Maverick maybe at one point. It was like, yeah, these aren't the greatest cars, Des. Anyway, he would get into an argument with you about Pinto is the most amazing automobile that's ever been made. And by the time he's done, you're like, yeah, I guess maybe it is. Okay. So he could be really convincing. But I've known Des basically through my whole life over the years. We were when we got to high school, we were on the debate team together. And I learned a little bit more about him then. One of the things that I always admired about Des, especially growing up in Mississippi in the 1970s, was he was quite a contrarian. And, if ever there's a good place to be a contrarian, I think 1960s, 1970s Mississippi, good place not to necessarily be swept up with whatever the groupthink is. And he definitely was not swept up in anybody else's groupthink. He thought the way he thought.
No doubt.
Not the way anybody else did. But I remember he always, through his whole life, he sort of saw things in people that might otherwise be overlooked. I think the only time I ever saw him get upset or angry was when he felt like somebody was being treated unfairly. And that was sort of a big part to me of who he was. That and the fact that he was just such a great friend. He would call me up, especially over I guess the last 20 years, every couple of months, I'd get a phone call. And the call would usually start with, and you're all probably familiar, the call would start with, guess what I just bought? Guess what I'm driving? You're never going to guess what. And it'd be like, oh, dear God, I don't know. I've run out of cars, Desmond. I can't believe you haven't run out of cars. I had a conversation with him a few weeks before the accident, but the last thing I remember that he sent me was out of the blue, because, he obviously wanted to drive interesting cars himself, but he wanted the best for you, whether you knew it or not. So he texted me out of the blue and he said, I've found the perfect car for you. You need to get a BMW. I think it's an iX3. It's the really goofy looking one where when you drive it by, people stand and point. And he's like, this is the perfect car for you. I remember thinking, I don't know if I should be complimented that he's thinking about me or insulted, but anyway, classic Desmond is one of a kind. Just a great guy.
Wonderful, Jeff. Thank you. We have Treese and Jason Wilbanks and Judy Wilbanks, who Judy is Patrice's daughter,
Yes.
and Jason is Patrice's son-in-law, and we have
Chris.
Chris. Oh, hi, Chris. Well, we can't see you because you're out of screen. Sorry, I didn't even know you were on the call. And Christina Toups, who is Dex's
And then
older
Callie
sister, and Callie, of course. Wonderful.
and baby Charlie.
And Dave and Charlie.
Baby Charlie.
Oh, and baby. Oh, yes, of course.
Great piece.
Who's out of screen and can't talk for himself yet. That's probably a good thing because we're going to run out of time otherwise. Patrice, would you like to?
Well, I've known Des, as long as y'all have, and I really didn't get to know him until he was an adult. But he always was there for a phone call and advice on anything I needed. He made 2 trips a year down to Mississippi to see Chris and I and stay with us, and then we got tired of our crap. He bought his own condo, and he would go and stay. I always drive a different car. He had the Velociter, a Miata. I had a yellow Honda park. I never parked in my garage. Desmond parked in my garage for the spring, and then he'd come back and drive it back to Portland. But he was an amazing man. He was a great storyteller. And when we went to clean out his condo, he had a box of pictures, and I was amazed at how many pictures of my children were in there. But I remember him looking at me one day and says, "Your children are amazing in spite of you." So that was
That's a Des thing.
Or he'd say something like, "No, not really." Well, not really. But anyway, he's missed quite a bit. Yeah. 9 months later, the pain is still there. I don't think it'll go away for any of us anytime soon because he resonates. And of course, the way it happened, it hit differently for everybody. So I'll continue to keep him. I'll never forget him. But
that's not possible. Not possible. Desmond's allegiances to family and friends, I think, speak for themselves. The fact that there are so many people on the call with personal experiences with him. His beauty was more than skin deep because his character was so resident. He was always present. He was never absent-minded. It didn't seem like his head was somewhere else. He was always totally focused on the moment and whoever was in that moment, in ways that to me were just the most admirable thing. Judy, do you have anything? Jason, Callie, anyone in that screen?
Yes, I'm Judy. I'm Desmond's niece, and my husband Jason over here of 12 years. And Des was just like, I always looked forward to seeing him because, I mean, like everybody has said on the call, he was just such a great conversationalist. And even though I was obviously a child for, much of me knowing him, I always felt like he was talking to me like an equal. Like even when I was in college and still very much a kid, I always felt like he was talking to me like I was an equal. And I look forward to seeing Des because you never know what you're going to get into. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the episode of Friends where Chandler and Joey, they're like getting excited to see their old friend and they pack like a tube of sunscreen and an extra set of socks because they never know what's going to happen with this friend. I kind of feel like that's what Des was like. He would always take you somewhere, show you something. He was always wanting to expand your mind and your experience. And that's something that I very much have taken with me from him. He was just someone I always look forward to seeing. And I think I said this when we got on a call soon after he passed. Something that really meant a lot to me was he found himself in Macon, Georgia one day, passing through from Atlanta to somewhere. And he called me and I was in college and he said, "Let me take you out to dinner," out of nowhere. And it was not something he typically did. And he came and picked me up at my campus and took me to dinner and dropped his knowledge on me, about, he didn't like my major. I'm pretty sure I was majoring in psychology at the time. Didn't know what I was going to do with that. So I switched to business, much to his and my father's joy and excitement. He just, when when he spoke with confidence and as somebody who, and with authority, like he said it and you're like, oh yeah. And so I don't know. He was just somebody I very much looked up to, always look forward to talking to and to seeing. And I greatly miss him.
Wonderful. Beautiful.
So you got Chris over here too. I don't know if Chris has anything.
I could talk about this all day long, but I'm not going to.
Chris, would you sit next to Jason, please, so we can all see you?
I'm the one out of frame.
Ah.
I miss the hell out of my brother. You're not supposed to have a paper brother, and I don't. Yes, but Desmond was such a huge part of our lives. If we needed bailing out, or we needed assistance, or we needed advice, he was there. He was a great sense of support, a great sense of humor. We look forward to every visit he made down to us. We made sure we had some of his favorite things to eat or drink. We waited up at night to greet him at the door. I'm not sure if we would have done that for too many of the people that it's gonna be at midnight and they'll let us know, when they get here. But we waited for him, anticipating just his wonderful humanity. I've been writing for like 40 years. He was a wonderful editor for me. He was not afraid to tell me if I had the makings of a bloated epic and I need to trim some fat, kill my darlings. And I really appreciated the fact that he was fearless, not only for his own work, but for mine too. He wanted the best to come out of me. So I'm back writing again. I didn't think I would after he passed.
Wonderful. Christina has quite a gift, a literary gift. I look forward to seeing you finish and sling something into this world so we can all take advantage of it.
Well, you can bet it's going to be dedicated in his name. I might sit back, so I can talk all day long. We miss the hell out of him here. There's nobody quite like him. And I'm driving a Ford. I'm sure, I hope we prove it's a Ford Fusion. No, not a Fusion.
Fusion.
It's a Fusion, but it's a hybrid. So didn't quite make it to that all electric car that he had plans for me. Saying I would be the perfect candidate, just like he did for us. I have the perfect car for you, and I didn't know that I was interested in having that car until after he was gone. But anyway, I'm driving a Ford, so following in his footsteps. That Ford is the only car dealership he had something invested in, money invested in. So that must say something. But anyway, that's, like I said, I'll rattle on and I don't want to.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Anyone else in this screen?
No, I'm good. I knew Desmond somewhat. I think the last time we saw him was years ago, and he took us out in the town in Biloxi and took us gambling, and we met some of his friends at their house, and it was,
we had Thanksgiving together.
I was about to say, if you want to, you can look this up. That Desmond and I actually had a chance to meet at Thanksgiving. Adam had invited me to Thanksgiving with his family before we were even dating. And I'm pretty sure at that moment, Desmond called him out on his shit and was like, "You're dating this girl." And, I think we were. He realized we were more serious, I think, than we thought we were at the time. So, of course, that was great. I thought he was very insightful, very inquisitive, and he had, just as someone said earlier, he was certainly the great debater. I think there were some times at that Thanksgiving where Adam and Desmond would not see the same points, but it was Desmond could convince you of anything. My gosh, he really commanded attention, and he knew what he was talking about. It was really wonderful to watch somebody, take the side of something you've never really thought about or never thought was right, and he would make you think about it, and he'd really make you kind of just change the way you thought about things. I thought that he was wonderful. So it was great to have that family. I guess that holiday, that's what started our, now marriage. Adam and I just celebrated 2 years of marriage on, last Tuesday. So that's going to be really huge that we'll think is so special. So he was great.
And wonderful Charlie is baby number one. Congratulations.
I know.
Welcome.
Still hoping that, you know, maybe number two will come along Sunday, but there are some days that this one is a handful on her own. So
I'm sure. Well, on behalf of everyone, welcome to the family. Ah!
well, we really appreciate that. Like I said, it's wonderful to meet all the wonderful people that I've heard so much about. So this is wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. We slay the dragons of distance at least, if not some time. So wonderful. Next screen, Bev O'Shea. Bev, good to see you.
Good to see you. Let's see. Des hired me at MSN Money in 2007. I think that's right. And he also hired me at NerdWallet. And when he died, I was working for him as a freelancer. So I have a long history of working with Des. What else? My daughter, when she was 17, could say Des Toups like a curse word because I consulted him about what kind of car to get for her that would be safe. And she had a Subaru Legacy station wagon that she blamed on Des. She never met him, but it was just like, I will never have a date because I have to drive this stupid Des Toups car.
That's great.
But anyway, it was great, and the windows always made a noise, no matter how many times we took it to supposedly get it fixed. If she went like more than 50 miles an hour, there would be this whooshing, so you couldn't have a conversation.
Noisy.
I thought it was a great car, but Maggie didn't.
Was it safe? Did she ever crash it?
Oh, it was safe. It was totally safe. That thing was a tank. It wasn't even a Legacy Outback. It was like low and slow, in Des's words.
Low and slow, indeed. Wonderful.
Maggie thought that was borderline unforgivable. And she goes, why would you ask your boss what kind of car I should drive anyway? There were lots of good reasons. But I mean, Des hired me as a copy editor, and then he hired me as a writer, which he had to teach me how to be. So I love Des. I miss him every day.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bev. The next screen is Maggie Lung.
Hey there. I met Des in the 1990s at the Seattle Times, and he was memorable from the start. And we didn't overlap for very long there because I had left the paper. But years later, I was looking for editors when I was building a team at NerdWallet early stage. And I remember connecting with Des again, and I knew I had to get him. He was such a great editor, and I thought he would be such a great dynamic, create such a great dynamic at NerdWallet. So, but he wouldn't come. He was living in the Bay Area at the time, and he was about to move up to Vancouver or Portland area. And he said, well, maybe we'll catch up later. And he said that his boss at the time at this other company was great. So I figured I would hire that boss and make his life miserable there so that he would have to join us. And it worked. So he ended up joining us. And of all the people at NerdWallet, it was a sizable team, still is a very, very talented team, the best team I've ever worked with in news or otherwise. Des was the most creative, unusual editor I'd ever met. And I always valued him for all of those qualities and much more. And then when I found out years later that he had left NerdWallet and was available, I immediately reached out to him to ask him to work with me at my job then at ClickUp. And we ended up doing that. And I saw him about a week before the accident. And it was just shattering to hear the news. I just couldn't believe that such an amazing person, not just as an editor, but as just a life force was gone. And many of us will miss him, continue to miss him. I just was talking to somebody else a few days ago about something I'm trying to do at my new job to build a new team. And the person said exactly what I was thinking. Des would have been such an amazing addition to this team. And so for all the the folks who miss him. There are just legions of us.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Let's see, next screen is Liz Weston, or did we do you, Liz?
Yeah, Liz has already spoken.
Okay.
Yeah, we did me already.
Pardon my truncated memory here. Ron Bowers next on our list here. Are you with us, Ron?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
That we are actually just finishing up an autocross day here. I don't know if you guys saw me in the helmet a little while ago, but like Garrett, I've actually known him for a really long time. Not as well as I would have liked, but always a friendly face at all the autocrosses. Back when he was, I guess, working for MSN Autos, he would get cars to do reviews on, and he brought a couple of those out to an autocross that we had out in Bremerton, and it was wet. One of the days that he did it, he brought out a Audi A8L, which, if you're familiar with the size of that car, it is huge. It's not something that you would think of as an autocross car, and he let me run it. I ended up with top time of day in that versus everything else that was out there, including Porsches and everything else. And he was just always such a giving person, always so great to have around. And so we're kind of closing down here, but yeah, it's great to have been able to get on this call while at an autocross, which is something that he just always loved doing.
Very timely.
Thank you, Ron.
Yep.
Wonderful. I'm very interested in seeing any footage of Desmond doing his thing in any venue, whether journalism, tech, or racing. Feel free to reach out to me and send me what you got. I'd love to find ways of shoehorning all of this into his living tombstone, which will be destoups.blogspot.com. I didn't want to spend $1,000 to publish a throwaway obit in the local newspaper. Figured it was going to be more useful long-term to have a page that becomes a repository for what we know and love about Des and wish to hang on to. So thank you, Maggie. Let's see. Yes.
There is a video, Jay, of Desmond driving his car. It's on a YouTube channel.
Okay, I'll have to run it down.
It's about 4 years old. You don't see him, but it's in his car. And he talks about the written word about his timing and everything. It's done at.
So I can find it on YouTube. Okay. Let's see.
Hey Jay, I'm still trying to track down the original of his car and driver cover that he was on. So as soon as I get that, I'll make sure I publish it.
Wonderful. Let's see. Julie and Mark, have you all spoken?
No.
Very good. Thank you.
Not yet. No. Thanks.
A little setup before you get started, Mark. Mark was Desmond's co-driver at SCCA events for a number of years. They were very close. They tag teamed and were on the same automobiles, which is a pretty rare thing, at least in pro personal autocrossing, to the best of my knowledge. So that said, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. So I met Des. I think it was about 2012. He was living in the Bay Area at the time, or had a place in Berkeley at the time, and was coming out to some of the local autocrosses. And when I first met him, he was driving a Honda CRZ, and if you know what that is, it's a little 2-seater hybrid, gas hybrid car. Not a lot of power, but he just loved that it was unique and different, and that kind of set the tone as I got to know him over the years of how he loved quirky, different, weird stuff. And I was trying to add it up since 2012 to last year. there's been at least 15 to 18 cars that he has bought and raced and gotten rid of in that time frame. So he loved to play with different stuff. And then a couple years later, he had got one of the first Scion FRSs, the Subaru BRZs, you know, those little coupes that came into the country. He had got one, and I had a Miata at the time. We were at an event and didn't know him very well, just some casual conversations prior to that, and he just tossed me the keys to his car and said, "Go run it," you know. And I'm like, man, this guy, I hardly know. He doesn't really know me. He's just letting me drive his brand new car, and that kind of set things off. We became fast friends, you know, in autocross, we have the ability, because it's one run at a time, where you can share a car with somebody, and we do that a lot. And, you know, it's kind of, you know, there's always interesting arrangements with people on whether there's a monetary thing involved, if someone's driving your car or whatever. But with Des and I, it was just always an open invitation. No matter what, he could always drive my car, and I knew I always, you know, could drive anything he had. And the friendship just evolved from that to not just racing, but it was, yeah, he was probably my closest friend. I mean, not a week would go by where we didn't have a conversation on the phone, because, you know, he was traveling all over the country and living in different places or whatever, but we would always talk, especially like post event Sunday afternoon. I'd laugh with Julie because she'd see the phone ring and go, "Oh, okay, I'll see you in an hour and a half."
Yeah.
That's about how long the conversations would go, and I called it my daily dose of Des,
Yeah.
you know, and so
That is so
I so miss those calls, and just his friendship meant so much to me. And it wasn't just about cars either; it was life, and you know, like a lot of people have said how smart he is, yet very convincing, even if he's not quite the smartest guy in the room at that moment, and he's convincing. And and it wasn't in such a way where he needed to prove that he was right. It was because he genuinely cared and wanted to offer his help in any way he could, whether it was finances, whether it was family, it didn't matter, you know. And we used to just have some great conversations. But and then, you know, one of the funny things I always say about Des is, you know, he loved the quirky, weird car. He liked trying to find that diamond in the rough that nobody else ever thought of, that he could take out to an autocross and do well. And I think, you know, Ron, you know, mentioned that Audi A8. That was Des's MO, was bringing out something that was different. And he's the only guy I think I know that didn't buy just one 4-cylinder pony car, but he had 4 of them over the period of about 3 years. 2 Mustangs and 2 Camaros was 4-cylinder. And it's just kind of funny because who wants a pony car with a 4-cylinder? You want the big V8, right? But to talk to him about his convincing nature, I ended up buying one of those damn things. And well, not only that, the year before that, I raced with him in his red Mustang, and we went to nationals and did pretty well. And then the following year, I bought one of those 4-cylinder Camaros and ended up winning a national championship with it that following year. So yeah, anyway, just miss him to death, and you know, so many great memories that I'll cherish forever.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you were very tight with him. It's that's a pretty un-American thing of I'll throw you the keys to my car and let you go out and thrash it. We're not usually like that. I can relate very much. I was out visiting Des in 2019. In fact, we went through COVID together before it was even called COVID. In early January of 2020, and he threw the keys to his Honda Civic SRI or whatever.
SI, yep.
Append your said, "Let's go eat dinner," and you drive, and okay, great, and I go trying to be like Des, and then he goes, "Oh no, keep your foot out of it." He had just put an exhaust tip on it, and it was sounded badass, and I just had to get those revs up. And he goes, no, no, no. Anyway, I have my own stories about Des and automobile
Yep.
fetishes, as it were.
Oh yeah, I could go on and on and on, but in the interest of getting everybody to chime in, again, just appreciate what you're doing here, and it's great to hear the stories from all aspects of Des's life, because I think some of us only kind of knew a smaller part of his whole life and story.
I think that was intentional.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Let's just say compartmentalized a bit, and
He was pretty much a need to know guy.
Yes, but anyway, thanks for doing this, and honored to be part of it.
Oh, pleasure. Glad to have you all, Mark and Julie. Let's see, moving on. Is it Tasha Miko?
Yeah, my name's Tasha Miko, and I'm actually down with Ron Bauer at Packwood. We were running an event this weekend. I met Des, oh gosh, a little over 20 years ago at an autocross, and he was driving a Ford Escort ZX2 that was yellow. And yeah, that was one of his oddball cars. But yeah, Des was he was always one of my most favorite people to see when we'd come out and race, and he let me drive his cars. I don't know if I had, yeah. Sorry. I miss him. I really miss him a lot. And yeah, it's great that you guys are doing this, and I appreciate the opportunity to be included and hear about other parts of his life, because yes, I knew he worked in journalism, and I knew he dabbled in a lot of different things, but didn't necessarily know all that much about it. But yeah, I really miss Des, and he was just one of the most lovely, charming, funny, and at times quite ridiculous people I've ever known.
Tell us something ridiculous.
Oh, ridiculous. We once I was at an event with him one time, and he was frustrated with how he was driving, and I was like, well, all right, well, what are you gonna go do different? He's like, I'm gonna go drive like a dick. I was like, okay, go do that. And he went out, and he finally like cleaned it up and went faster on his run. And yeah, so we had a running joke about that for quite a long time. I was with him the weekend that he passed. He was helping me with my tires that weekend. So I got to spend some nice time with him that weekend. So yeah.
You were at the event. Tasha mentioned Packwood. That is the course in southern Washington that Desmond died at. And yeah, you all who were with Des on his last day, I would love to spend time with all of you just to kind of soak up the aftermath of that, because this was the kind of the big wham in all of our lives of, well, we kind of know what happened, but the eyewitness aspect of this, we'll get into that in a little while, but I want to keep going so that we get everybody's first round drops in place, and we can double back. Let's see, we've got, go ahead, Tasha. Thank you.
I was just going to say, I'm going to be heading home soon, and I will probably go into a cell phone dead zone. So I may lose you, but I appreciate this, and it's, yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just also, this is Ron again. The events that we ran today are part of a series that it's with our Western Washington Sports Car Council, and we have named the series for this year the Des Toups Championship Series. So,
Oh, wow, wonderful.
Well, let you guys know that.
Oh,
He meant a lot
wow.
to us in the autocross community.
Well, didn't he serve as a kind of a de facto course ambassador of taking first timers around in their cars, get familiar with the course layout and so on?
Yes,
He
he
would
did.
do that. Yeah, he did that a lot.
There's a gas thing that a bunch of people have put on their cars and stuff, because that was something that he loved saying when he was out riding with people, is gas, gas, gas.
Yeah.
Get your foot into it sooner. Interesting. Let's see.
Yeah. And each time he yelled gas at you, it was with more and more exclamation.
That kind of runs in our family. We are just excitable lot. Let's
I
see.
actually have the pleasure of making Des scream out of fright on the autocross course. So I don't know if he's done that, if anybody else has managed to get him to scream and lose his cool or not on the course, but I did.
I haven't done that. I made him laugh a lot.
Interesting. Well, again, any footage of him doing his thing would be wonderful to view and cobble together into some kind of reel, because this is a part that none of the people in our family really know very much about, was his alter ego driver extraordinaire. And obviously he was quite good at what he did, but to us, he was just Des. Drayton has been autocrossing with him, but all of my familiarity with Desmond racing is, I'd call him, Des, where you at? And he goes, I'm in Omaha at the Nationals, or I'm in Washington, and I've only got a few minutes. What's up? You know, he's always dealing in his spare time with his passion, which was racing. So let's see, who else have we got? Monica Toups is Drayton's daughter, oldest daughter. Are you with us? There she is. Hi, Monica.
I'm actually, it's funny. I'm actually on my way to go watch F1 with my husband and some of his friends. And what I was going to say is, actually, when he would come see us, he took my brother to go around the track several times. This was something in our household. My brother and I and our mother, we all loved cars. And so this was something that we did do with him. And, I was a kid for a lot of his life. But when we would go up to visit my mother's sister in Oregon, he would make a point to meet with her. We would either meet at like a park or something like that, and he would drive down and see us. And he always showed interest in us and seemed to really enjoy us when he spent time with us, which was so wonderful. We all really loved him, and we all were really sad. I'm so sorry, my hands are shaky. We all really are going to miss him a lot. And the sudden nature of this was it's never easy. It's never easy, but suddenness is particularly difficult. Yeah. So, yeah, I really want to express gratitude to all of you who have come on here and talked about like his journalism and the kind of boss he was and the kind of colleague. Like, that's a whole side of his life I had no way of knowing about, because again, I was a kid. What do I know about news? So it's lovely to hear these things and to feel like I can know a little bit more about him. It just kind of sucks that it's after, but yeah, thanks everybody for coming. It's really, really lovely to hear.
Well,
thank you, Monica. Love you, baby.
It's
Love you, Daddy.
Kind of a rounding out of a story that really needs that kind of circularity to be digestible, because we all knew Desmond our way. We all had a unique relationship with him, and felt, you know, that it was there was always reciprocity in the arrangement, whether family, friend, associate, and it really has expanded our families. If you can say, love and respect for our brother, because there was so much about him that we didn't know, because he spent the majority of his life in far-flung locales, at least relative to the core of the family, which typically lived in the Deep South. But the diaspora continues, and for the first time in 50 years, none of my family lives in Gulfport, Mississippi, as of February, when Patrice finally moved to Blythe Island, Georgia. So kind of the end of an era for our family. The highway on the beach is named after my mother, or our mother, as the Judith Toups Least Turn Memorial Highway. She was a field ornithologist, a bird lady, and a writer in her own regard. She wrote a newspaper column for the Sun Herald for the better part of 40 years, wrote thousands of columns, and I'm going to make a point here about Desmond shortly, just one moment, bear with me. The campaign to preserve nesting habitat for the least term migratory shorebird colonies who flew in from South America every year was something my mother mounted, which was called Nest in Peace, as in rest in, but nest in peace. Desmond coined that phrase and actually made the original hand drawing of the logo with the tern, which became the sign which sat on the beach for literally decades, as my mother championed and petitioned the city and county to set aside large swaths of the beach habitat for these migratory shorebirds who laid their eggs in the nest. And unfortunately, the eggs looked a lot like sand, and so there was a lot of chick mortality, a lot of egg destruction, because it was a tourist beach. And she finally won that battle a few years after she died in 2007, and that battle was won, I believe, in 2010, when the city and the state acknowledged her contribution and called it this stretch of beach where these they allowed dunes to form, and they planted sea oats and they put fences around them. No humans here. That was historical, because this beach was pumped in. It's a man-made beach, 27 miles long, of sugar beach, with nothing, no distinguishing topology whatsoever. Flat as a pancake. You wouldn't recognize it today for the changes that my mother and the Mississippi Coast Audubon Society and that campaign that Desmond put himself into by thinking, well, what would that look like? Nest in peace.
Hey, Jay,
Yes.
I have the
There it is.
There
right
it is.
there.
Can you put it up to the screen?
I don't know how to do that. I'll get Judy to do it. I have one. I've kept it all the time.
Oh, that's the one. That's exactly that's Desmond art. Wonderful.
Nice.
I made sure it has a happy place.
Oh, good. Hey,
Really quickly, Desmond was, we had a hurricane fairly early, I guess, early 80s in Mississippi. Mama drove her station wagon down to the eastern area, took some of those kids, and we went and picked up the young terns that could not fly, put them in garbage cans or baskets, and threw them in the back of our car. Must have loaded 500 or 600 baby terns into the back of the station wagon to protect them from surge. After 2 or 3 days, she brought them back, turned them loose, and cleaned out her car. And 2 days later, she gave the car to Desmond to take on a date. She did, and reached to high heaven he was trying to impress this girl. I'm afraid it was a terrible failure. He said she was polite as could be, didn't mention the stench, but that day got cut short, and Desmond paid for back the car. There was only so much that could be done, and so I don't know what happened to it. But Desmond got the stink fest. I think he had to throw away his clothes. It was so bad.
Oh, have we heard from everyone? Kathy Henson, have we heard from you? Sorry if I.
Yeah, I will say, you know, Des was, as you say, very compartmentalized and could be kind of private. But that was the story about your mother's efforts and how that conservation effort finally prevailed was one thing that a story he told me about his family. He was very proud of that and proud of her. Because he was so compartmentalized, when you did get a little tidbit like that, you just felt like, oh, I'm kind of an insider now, right? But it was funny because, you know, he wouldn't talk about himself, but he would talk about other people. And so it's just interesting because I know that everybody that at NerdWallet that he worked with, he had said to me at one point or the other how fabulous they were. He was just like, oh, we were so lucky to get Liz Weston. She is marvelous. Her, just everything that she writes is like perfection. And, you know, oh, Rick, he's so, you know, and Kim, it was so funny. Kim Lowe was talking about how she felt like they butted heads and he had some strong feedback for her, but all he ever said to me was, oh, she's so smart. We're so lucky we got her from MSN. So I don't know. It's just interesting to hear everybody's facet of Des and to then also have seen some of those facets reflected back to me. You know, seeing some of you through his eyes was very interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, along those lines, Kathy, it was amazing to me at NerdWallet with Des being such a creative force that he was always self-effacing. He always, pretended to be like such a stupid person compared to everybody else on the team, which is, incredible knowing how great he was.
That was him. Running,
and Jay,
shrieking,
if I can,
shrieking from the spotlight, and don't you dare take a picture of me.
Oh, yeah.
Jay, I wanted to hop on that. You guys, I'm calling from Paris, and it's getting a little late here, so I won't be able to stay to the bitter end. But I feel like when it was my turn, I kind of froze up because there was so much I wanted to say.
Thank you.
And I couldn't quite get it out. But I went looking because Des was funny. You know, he made you laugh constantly. And I went back through a bunch of our texts and emails, and everything I found that was funny, he was the straight man. He was making me look good. And that was what Des did with copy, with our careers. There's so many of us here that I would not have had the career that I had without Des. I mean, he stepped in, he convinced MSN that they had to spend the money to do a Nielsen net ratings thing to show how much reach we were getting and all that. And that led directly to a book deal. I mean, he was incredibly instrumental. And I've heard so many stories from other people who had the same experience that he just brought them along. And, Bev mentioned it, that he really brought her to a new level in her career. And he totally did that with me. So he was amazing at making other people shine and getting the spotlight on him. And he wasn't so much about, getting himself. And the other thing I wanted to mention with all the car stuff is when my husband bought a Mustang, he sent me all these videos of Mustangs going out of control in crowds, like smashing into all these people. And that was his sense of humor in a nutshell. So anyway, thank you so much, Jay, for putting this together, and everybody for being here. It's been really special.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, we have 8-hour difference, so we wish you bonne nuit.
9. Well, no, wait a minute. You're Montana. That's right. That's right. I was thinking West Coast, but yes, fun meets, and thank you all. It was good to see everybody.
Good to see you, Liz.
Bye.
Let's see, where are we now? I think we've got everyone's first
Yeah.
round. Go ahead.
Jay, just I want to step in real quick. My wife Chelsea McConnell has been off and on. She's working today, unfortunately, so I think she's kind of popping in and out as she
You've been
has
seeing her.
availability. But it looks like she dropped off. But I just wanted to just say a couple of things there. I think we got to know Des a lot together. Through the last few years. Like I said, going to those national events and things like that in particular. But a couple of things I know kind of from Chelsea's perspective, I think, and other folks have mentioned it here, but Des was able to, I think one of the things that she appreciated the most is Des was able to talk about anything and just connect with you as a person, not just, with just cars or, one particular topic. And I think that was something that she really appreciated. Cars are not necessarily her number one. She is very kind and humors me in my hobby. I think it's come to enjoy it, but finding people like Des and having that connection, I think, made it a lot easier for her. Having somebody she could just talk to as a person and as a friend, not as a car nut, right? She could, he would talk to her about anything, finances, personal stuff, anything and everything, and really make that connection. The other thing that I certainly appreciated is Des, did ride with her quite a bit, during some of the test and tune events, trying to help her improve. And, I am maybe not the best coach in the car. So I find it hard to find the right feedback to give. And, certainly Des always seemed to be able to do that. So, he was able to jump in the car with her and, really provide feedback in a way that clicked. And, that she was able to really improve. So, just a couple of notes on that side since, Chelsea had to drop a little bit, earlier in the play.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Garrett. And let me ask you to talk a little bit about your last ride with Des, and I'm going to follow your description of what happened with kind of a roll up of what happened with Desmond's passing, so that we can move through that and everybody has heard the official story, because there hasn't been an official story really told in broad terms. So anyway, if you wouldn't mind, Garrett.
Sure. Yeah. So I can kind of, go through, just go through kind of the event, what happened, kind of how things unfolded there.
Yeah. Just in the sense of what was that like for you in the personal sense. We don't need you to chronicle everything, but you were in that place for a reason, and you have this novel experience with him, which is valuable, I think, to everyone else to hear.
Sure. So to myself and a few others who have been kind of in and out here, we're all at the event where Dez's accident occurred, and certainly, a shock for everybody, but very kind of a shock at the event, or just a very traumatic event there. I think it was clear. Even at the time we were wondering what happened. We just heard basically a crash and looked over, could kind of see the aftermath. I think it became clear. I think Jay, you had some of the insight there of the medical emergency that precipitated it. After the crash, I think a couple of things that that stuck with me. Just being with Des, you know, wanting to make sure that somebody was with him at least as long as possible. You know, he was life flighted from Packwood, you know, from an airfield in town. And I was with him in the ambulance while we were waiting for the life flight to show up. But you know, a couple of things that I took from that is that he truly was Des, you know, through and through, and was there, I guess I would say. And he was more concerned for other people than for himself. That was the thing. You know, the question he kept asking was, you know, did I hurt anyone? You know, he was much less concerned about himself and you know his injuries, and much more concerned about anybody else at the site, and that everybody else was okay. And I think that was something that definitely, I mean, it was just Des, I guess. And the other one was that, you know, he somehow managed to keep good humor. He, you know, I don't know if he could sense, you know, my stress or what have you, just being there with him, but you know, still was managing to crack jokes in the ambulance and lighten the mood a little bit. You know, even given how you know grave the situation were, and obviously how serious his injuries were. But you know, it was very Des-esque somehow finding a way to, you know, make a joke and lighten the situation, you know, even under those circumstances.
That was that was just the default nature of Des was to always look for the bright side, sunny side. And I think out of all six of Judy's kids, Des being the youngest of the six of us, Desmond kind of got that aspect of my mother. Is that my mother was indefatigable. You couldn't make her mad or frown, because she kept her sense of humor to the nth. And I think that Desmond had that in spades all of his life. He was like a duck, and nothing stuck to Des. He just let it go, and he always was chipper, positive. There was not a lot of, he was not vituperative, to use that $5 word. And that was the most beautiful thing about the energy that Desmond brought to his human affairs. And I can say that personally, but as has been reflected around the call today with everyone's experiences with him. Desmond died of complications of lacerations and contusions, mainly to his internal organs and primarily his heart. It was determined that what precipitated the event was that he had a heart attack literally behind the wheel as he was finishing the course and lost consciousness, hence the straight line nature off the course directly into the porta potty where Amber Dawn Jorgensen was killed. He never saw any of that, never experienced any of that. And him coming back to regaining consciousness after being pulled out of this totally destroyed car, and we have not distributed pictures of the car, but it's pretty smashed in, which caught fire. Desmond regained consciousness in the ambulance, and so his conversation with Garrett was the last conversation he had on this earth. And the autopsy was pretty unequivocal about what the cause of death was, but that he had that reprieve from meeting his maker, from having the heart attack to losing consciousness, having this crash, and not even being aware that another person lost her life as a result of this. It would have destroyed him to know that. And so I'm glad that he left this world not knowing what happened when he lost consciousness, because he would be the last person on earth to, feel anything but just, destroyed by that somebody else suffered as a result of his act. Anyway, he did die on the operating table, and as I have dealt with that realization and of how to share it, I've been seeing articles about heart attack risk increasing with the rise of microplastics. And it's becoming quite a phenomenon in this world that we are inhaling and ingesting plastics and microplastics in copious amounts, whether we live in a clean house or a dirty house. It's just the world we live in is awash in environmental contaminants. And I am going to actually take another step here with King County, Washington, and the hospital there to try to do some analysis on Desmond's fluids and so forth. Because I think there is some recourse in at least knowing, well, what may have precipitated his heart attack. Heart attacks run in my family. My older brother died from a heart attack. I had a heart attack in 2008, which landed me in the hospital for a week. I have 2 stents. So 3 of the 4 male Toups people are definitely intimate with heart attacks. I'd love to avoid another one. Desmond's masqueraded as him thinking he had heartburn. And he was just beginning to clue into, well, maybe I need to go see a cardiologist and do a stress test and so forth. And he had that appointment scheduled when he died. But in the meantime, he had his heartburn medications, eat this, drink, whatever heartburn medications are, because he was kind of self-diagnosing himself. Well, my chest feels funny, it must be heartburn because I'm not going to ever have a heart attack. Well, news, anybody can have a heart attack, and we do. So, as we said in Desmond's obit, drink more water, drink more Wasser, because that stuff is the juice of life, and the more you can't drink too much water. Well, you could, but not very likely. But more water, yes. Anyway, I'll be quiet now. Is there anyone? Karen, would you like? Thank you.
Well, as Dez's longtime reporter, I wonder if I could ask Garrett a question. And that is, do you remember any of the things that Dez said? You said he was cracking jokes or being light. Do you remember any of the things that he said in the ambulance?
I mean, kind of I guess the joke that he cracked was, the EMS team was, cutting off some of his clothing and whatnot to check for injury and things like that. And he's kind of laying there and just, I'm there and just the EMS team, and he just turns to me and says, "Oh no, I'm naked," and just. It's like, it'll be okay, Dad. Like, I'm not worried about it. Like, don't worry, I won't look. That was the one that I, as far as the kind of on the joke side of thing, remember certainly. And then just kind of asking, asking me, did I hurt anyone? Is everybody okay? And at the time, I didn't have enough information to give him an answer. And even if I had the information, I don't know that I would have given him that answer at that point.
Thank you, Garrett.
Beautiful. Let's see. Anyone would like to jump in with anything?
I would.
Please.
I just had a couple stories to share, and really ditto on everything that Liz said. And my story is, I got a pitch put in front of Des, and when he was an editor at MSN Money, and I was just starting out trying to be a freelancer. And after I did about 2 or 3 stories, he called me out of the blue and said, hey, I'd like to give you a raise, from $1 a word to $1.50 a word, and have you do more stories. Is that okay? I said, okay. Like, this never happens. And I'm just sort of stuttering, all right. And he laughed and said, yeah, you're okay with that? You're okay with that? I said, yeah, sounds good. And I stayed with him for 16 years, following him everywhere he went. And, after he died, I heard this story, from other people, Bev and Liz, and there were people who worked with him at multiple places. And he was incredibly loyal. He was loyal to people like me to no end. And his loyalty engendered this wonderful loyalty in others toward him. And as Liz said, I wouldn't have had a freelance career. I wouldn't have had the confidence probably to go after it. My trajectory would have been different. And, Des gave this wonderful gift, and it's been so hard since he died, because he realized how much he meant to me, that he was more than an editor, he was more than a mentor, he was more than a friend in each of those areas, because he crossed over, he was excelled in all of those. And it's it was really, I guess, sort of startling, amazing, wonderful, I don't know, overwhelming to realize, how strongly I felt about his loss, and then realize that how many other people feel the same way, because this is not, normal, nice person. This is not normal, good, smart editor. There was something exceptional about him, about that capacity to want to help, and treating people with incredible respect. And part of that respect was education, but delivering it in the most polite way. I just thought this must be a Southern thing, that somebody can be such a know-it-all and be so polite and charming at the same time. It's incredible. And my funny story that I wanted to share is quite recently, like maybe a month, before he died. He was, of course, always concerned about my health, and I was having some trouble, and he called me. That was having some trouble, also meeting some deadlines, and he called me and said, you have a minute to talk? Yeah. And he said, oh, okay. Well, wait, first, how are you feeling? How are you doing? I said, oh, good. Thank you. I'm feeling better than last week. Okay. You good? Doing good? You're feeling okay? I said, yeah, I'm feeling okay. He said, okay, I just wanted to get that out of the way before I yelled at you. And then, of course, he did not yell at me, obviously. He just explained nicely. And I think I said, okay, and you're going to yell at me? And he's like, well, I just did. I'm like, oh, okay.
I think Desmond would have made a good diplomat, depending on the country, of course.
And the other thing there's so often that I think of him, because there are things I want to share with him. And there is something remarkable and unusual about being a good audience, to being a good receiver. And like Liz said, he could play the straight man, and that's harder to do than to be the funny man. And he made me feel funny. He made me feel good. He made me feel smart. And that is one of the most wonderful gifts that you can give to other people. So I think a lot, sometimes I'll have a funny story and I think, damn, I can't share this with Des. It really sucks, And just I had to thought of a car thing that I wanted to share. So I told him that I had put in an order for an electric vehicle. and that it was due soon. And he said, "Oh, and you're going to get a charger for that? And where are you going to put it?" And I said, "Well, it'll be outside." And I said, "You don't have a garage?" I said, "Well, I do, but I can put the charger outside and park outside." And he said he was uncharacteristically sort of quiet just for a moment. And he said very polite, he said, "Well, most people, when they get a nice new car, they put it in the garage. They want to put it in the garage." And I said, and I thought, this is Des, and he knows what he's talking about. So I just said, it's also uncharacteristic of me. I said, "Oh, okay." So now I spent a weekend clearing out the garage, and now every time I go down there and I get to get in and out in this nice garage, and I look out on the driveway and see all the sticks and stones that have fallen onto the driveway, I say, "Thank you, Des, for saving my."
You're not worried about a battery fire in your garage?
No.
Good.
I,
That's why God made insurance, right?
I wanted to pick up on something that others have said. When Des would come by and visit with us, it was always in this sort of, you get some advance notice, but not a lot of advance notice. And he would come see us. And he was always, for us, he was like a supreme conversationalist. And we could talk about, it was like one of the aspects of a great conversation is you move from one thing to another, to another, to another. And it's like, writers talk about flow. Des was a master of conversational flow. And we always felt like, it would be a couple hours, maybe 3 hours, and it would have been just really vital. And at the end, it was like, wow, that was great. But one of the things that no one else has mentioned that I recall is whenever we saw him, we'd always talk about what have you been listening to in terms of music.
Music.
Like us, he kept an ear out for new music that he'd appreciate. And so we would, sort of trade like, well, I've been listening to such and such. And oh yeah, I know that. Well, have you heard of so and so? And he was definitely one of our sources for picking up on things in folks that we hadn't heard of, or confirmed that you should definitely check out Jason Isbell. And that was a long time ago. So I just wanted to mention, his breadth and depth, we just really enjoyed.
Absolutely. He was never flat-footed with his tie up with whoever he was speaking with. The more familiar, the better sometimes, because his family certainly got the best of Desmond in terms of he knew us so well, he knew us better than we knew ourselves, damn it. And that was sometimes a very beautiful thing, that he would just break through what I thought about something and go, "You don't really mean that," or he would call me on my shit, pardon me. And that was a beautiful thing, because it takes guts to kind of, beyond the personal and being so taciturn that you don't contribute to the growth of somebody. Desmond contributed to everyone's growth, and he got a lot of joy out of that. He was self-deprecating to a fault, and being his champion is a difficult thing, because he's there tearing at you, going, "No, no, no." That was Desmond's MO. Anyone else have an anecdote?
I just wanted to jump in to add also to what Nolan said. Des was so good about keeping in touch, so that over, this 30-year friendship, even when we didn't live in the same city, he would pop into our lives, usually with like 24 hours notice. That was fine. But we've always had dogs, and he always called our dog his dog child, or what was it? His
God dog.
His God dog. Yes, that's our dog was always his God dog. And that was always so sweet, because he would always like text or call, and he said, "I've got to come by to see my god dog. And and that was just terribly sweet. So we always appreciated that.
Interesting. Anyone?
I want to follow up too about Des. It would be remiss of me not to mention Des's love of food, and I like to eat, but I'm not an epicure in any sense. But during the pandemic, I sort of became, the substitute Sue because I was around, and he liked. I was very generous to go out to dinner. But during the pandemic, he would pick up a to-go meal and drive over from Vancouver to my house in Portland, and we would go to the park at first in social distance, and then we would go on my back porch. But he, part of this, also a tradition that I think he began with Sue, was we would go for a walk afterward. And everything that everyone has said, a great conversationalist. He talked about food, family, friends, cars, the latest protest in Portland. He would do one thing that I noticed that I think is very characteristic of Des. We'd be walking along and he would be making a point and he would stop, dead stop. So of course I would have to stop. And then he would hold forth about something, that he wanted to make sure that I was paying attention and heard, or something I could push back against. And, he would, gesticulate, and then we would keep going until he did it again. And he was always very interesting, very funny, and witty. And he talked about all of you. He talked about his childhood. He talked about his work relationships. He talked about work. These walks were really expansive, and you could tell he had a gift for family and friends and generosity. Okay, one more car story before I go on. So my car got stolen, and I think he got the last laugh because I also am in a Ford now. And he, drove me to the Ford dealership. He helped me pick it out. He waited with me for 15 months before I got it. And then I picked him up in it, of course, because this is, basically it's his car through me. And he got in, and it was the base model of the Ford Maverick. It's a hybrid.
The pickup truck.
And he liked the color. It was that blue color that they have, that they call Area 51 for some reason. But he got in it, and he said, "Oh, this is pretty basic," because it has none of the bells and whistles. I mean, I got into one of his cars, and he calls up, a 12 inch screen, and he's just going through all the noises it can make. And he was very proud of himself, and it was pretty cool. He also lent me his cars when I was without a car. When mine disappeared, he was on sabbatical, and he gave me the keys to his. It was I think a Ford Fiesta, but it was a souped up model, and it had a little rumble in it. And every time I drove it to this weekly hike with friends, they could hear me coming. And people would gather around, it had this beautiful little pearl sheen. It was white, in the sunlight, and he's very proud of it. And of course, I scraped up the hubcaps when I was parking once, because I was used to a bigger car and this was little. And I'm like, oh God, I gotta tell Des, I'm gonna have to show him. And he looked at it and he said, "I did that." I said, "You did not do that. I did that. You did not do that." He said, "No, I did that. That's fine." He goes, "You know what? I'm going to sell it for, $5,000 more than I bought it. So everything's fine." And he did, by the way. And then he let me borrow his convertible Miata during the pandemic, because I was meeting my sister and her family down the coast. It was one of the first big trips outside. And I drove it down the Oregon coast with the top down, and you know, it was beautiful. Everybody in the campground came around and looked at it. But again, I had little points on the front bumper, and I bumped up against a curb on it, and I'm like, I can't look. I know I scratched it. I know I scratched it. And again, Des is like, I did that. I'm like, no, you did not do that.
Ah,
I did that. And he sold it, no problem, more money. But back to walking and eating, he would always order food for 5 people, and it was just he and I usually. And he would never take the leftovers. He gave me all the leftovers. And in my family, I come from a big family. We're kind of territorial about our leftovers. So I would be eating these things for, the week, and thinking of him always, as I'm doing it, and appreciating his love of food, which I did not have. I loved his company and appreciated his company. And I wanted to say that, I will feast on my memories of Des and his stories, and you, his friends. I have really appreciated, and this is a fantastic way to remember Des. And if I can find it, I'll share his recipe for red sauce, because that is the most spectacular thing that I have from Des, one of them. And I've made it several times, and it gets better every time. And that's because of Des. We had finished eating. We went to a Safeway, and he goes, we're going to buy the ingredients for this sauce. And I'm thinking, oh, we got to go to the gourmet aisle. No. This is like whatever's on sale, in the sausage department. And everything was very, sale bin oriented, but putting it all together with his advice and expertise, it was perfect. And I will miss him.
Yeah.
when I was cleaning out his apartment or his condo, one of the getting through the all the chores involved eating as much food out of the refrigerator as I could, and that included frozen goods since he had all of the devices, toaster oven and food processor and blender and great oven and so forth. I came across a tub of his red sauce, and it was so good. I didn't even bother eating spaghetti. I just, it was just, I just ate it up. And I'm now the proud owner of his food processor, his drink stir. What do you call those little mixers?
Immersion blender.
Immersion
Immersion
blender.
blender, and various and sundry other kitchen implements of mass construction, and more than a handful of cookbooks. Although I think that he was more the recipe du jour. He'd find something on the internet. Oh, I got to make this, and he would. Anyway, Sue, you have. Go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, it sounds like we need to get that recipe for the red sauce on the website. So,
Oh, that would be good. Wonderful. Des
idea.
is
I will
red
do it.
sauce. Des is own.
I just want to echo what so many of you have said. I knew all of you. I knew all of your names, and I just figured I'd never meet any of you except Nolan and Mary. I knew you guys, and Chuck. A lot of his journalism friends I knew, but I didn't ever think I'd meet his family. I never thought I'd meet his racing friends. Des did keep things very, compartmentalized. Jackie Green and I used to say, we used to call it Des's little boxes. We're all in Des's little boxes. I just have 1,000 memories. A lot of great stories, a lot of great moments.
We've got
Just listening
time.
to you guys. Listening to you guys talk, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Makes a lot of things come back. I don't know which story to tell you. There's so many. I'll tell you the one about how I met him. How's that?
Please.
I was working at the North Platte Telegraph in Nebraska, and I wanted to get out of there because I
North-
couldn't seem to make any
North
money
Platte.
working in Nebraska. So
Wow.
I kind of papered the West and the Southwest with some resumes, and I got hired. Well, one of my resumes went to the Albuquerque Journal because I knew some people there, and I knew the editor. Well, I didn't know him. I knew who he was. And so he took my resume and dropped it off with the copy desk chief. And this is like the 80s, so there's like a stack of resumes, you know. And the copy desk chief handed the stack of resumes to Des and said, sort those out, pick out a few for me to look at, and then just the rest of them you can just meh. And so that happened. And then the copy desk chief went to the editor, who is the person I sent my resume to, and said, I'd like to interview these 3 or 4 or 5 people. And the editor said, well, where's the resume I gave you? And he said, oh, no, these people or much, you know. And he goes, no. You will interview her as well as all these other people because she worked for a guy that anybody that can work for that guy can work for me. Now, had I known that ahead of time, I could have gotten more money out of the deal, but I still managed to get hired. And Des told me that story. And I'm like Kim, who's left the conversation. Des and I didn't exactly hit it off at the very beginning. And the reason we stayed friends is just because Des insisted that be. Because I was just like, God, this guy, he's just so overwhelming. And he's just you know, I'm just like, give me a break. I want to read a book. Go away. You know, it was just that like that. But he was like, we have to go hiking. Come on, let's go. And you've never been to Chimayo. Let's go. And I'm like, okay. And then we just stayed friends because when Des moved to Alaska, he's like, I'll call you every Tuesday night when I get off work. And I'm like, what? It's like going to be midnight where I am. And he's like, no, it'll be fine. So we stayed friends. Des just kind of insisted. Talking about convertibles, Margaret, you reminded me of it. I used to come down from Alaska to Seattle for holidays and stuff. And Helen Jung was living in Seattle at the time. Some of you guys know Helen. And Des was in West Seattle. He loved West Seattle. He kept coming back to West Seattle. And he used to review cars for a long time there. He sort of satisfied his love of cars by reviewing them for the paper. So he'd get a new car every week. And so every week he'd call me and goes, guess what I got? You know, and I'm like, I have no idea. Okay. And that week that I was there, he had a Porsche. And it was a convertible. It was a Boxster, and it was a convertible. And so we drove over to Helen's for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever it was. And then we were driving back to West Seattle, and it was kind of drizzly, you know, winter in Seattle. And Des hits the button to take the top down, and he goes, we're going to go Sue's Way Home. Because he knew how much at night you could drive down the Alaska Viaduct, which is no longer there, and you just got this beautiful view of the water in West Seattle. And he just knew how much I loved it. And I'm like, it's raining. And he goes, top down, off we went. There's every time I come out of my apartment on Thursdays, we used to go to dinner. And when I lived in Portland and he lived in Portland or Vancouver, he would come over every Thursday night and we'd go to dinner. And every Thursday night I'd walk out and be like, is that a different car? And about every other time, the answer was yes. He's like, no, I got this. He didn't even bother to call me and he'd say, hey, I gotta go. Or he'd just show up in it. And I'd be like, we had a lot of fun.
He definitely went way beyond being a Ford man. He was a whatever man, as long as it spoke to him, vehicle wise.
He was really good about giving advice, whether you asked for it or not. And lots of times I would ask him advice just so I could do the opposite thing. Because I knew that the opposite thing was probably more that I would normally have done. It was great. No, I miss him every day. I think about him all the time.
Well,
so you said something that is kind of a metaphor for Des, and that is tap down and off we went. And that is great. That's how I'm going to remember him.
Margaret, do you remember him showing up in a screaming yellow Honda convertible? Do you remember that? We drove over to your place, I think, to show it off to you.
Oh, yes. And I also remember. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, everybody, you know, I always wanted a convertible. But now we're in our 50s, right? And we're driving down 17th, and all these people are looking at us. I'm going, I used to look at people like that. I used to look at people who are old and too old for a screaming yellow convertible. And he loved that car.
Yeah.
He had it for a hot minute, but he liked that car.
I actually have a picture of Desmond in that car on the track with Drayton in the passenger seat.
And that happens to be the car that I made him scream in.
Oh, he would literally race anything. He wanted to race anything and everything.
I'll be right back. And
I think Mark is gone, but I wanted to tell Mark how much Des really enjoyed watching Mark race and watching Mark win. But he always wanted, he'd be like, I was 3 seconds behind Mark, or I was 2 seconds behind Mark. And he always wanted to just like, that one time, win.
Yeah, I think Garrett made this point, but I used to hear a lot of his car. I'm not a car person, but I love talking to him about cars. I mean, I'm somebody who keeps a car until it dies. But yeah, I know he loved winning a race in a car that no one else would ever think of racing. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, he enjoyed the dark horse car for sure. And yeah, I don't want to jump in if you had anything else to say. I do have a kind of a fun story on that side of things as well. I guess it was funny. Des was also very much proud of campaigning those dark horse cars, and wasn't always ready to admit that he was wrong, I think, in some cases, which was very funny. I think I forget who mentioned, or Mark had mentioned, his forays into, 4-cylinder turbo pony cars. And I think one of the funniest stories is there was a Cadillac version. So the same basic platform as the Chevy Camaro, but from Cadillac, had the 4-cylinder turbo, and he's pouring through spec sheets and, well, this one has this size of wheels, so it should be faster than this other one. And one of the things with the autocross rules is you have to have wheels that are, at least within the class that he would always run in, that are very specific sizing from stock. And he bought the car, and before it even arrived, he went out and ordered a very expensive custom set of wheels to fit within that sizing based on the published specs that he could find. And gets the car, gets the wheels, takes it to the tire shop, and has them, mount the tires and put the wheels on the car. And they come in, and they're just holding back laughter and snickering, and have him come out to the shop. And lo and behold, the published specs for the wheels were not the actual specs for the car, and they did not fit on the car in the slightest. Just like, it looked like a hover car. They're 6 inches too far in. And normally Des, when he moves from one car to another, is very quick about letting things go. He has the get it out of my garage now pricing, which I benefited from a couple times. But that set of wheels, he could never bring himself, because he would basically have to give them away, and he was too proud to give them away. He sat on that set of wheels, and actually I have them in my back shed. We found them in his apartment when clearing it out, and I've been meaning to find some sort of art project or something to make out of them. But I just thought, he was very, very proud of the dark horse cars, and very proud when they worked. He would not let you forget that, hey, that was my idea, or that was my pick. I knew this car could do it. But also on the flip side of that, too proud to let those wheels go for free with how much he had invested in them, both from, I think more of time and energy than anything else. But
Garrett, was that the red Cadillac that he ordered from England?
It was, I believe, yes. Yeah.
I remember that car. He didn't like it. It was a 2-door, and the doors were so big that he was just like, I hate this car. These doors are like huge. Look at how big these doors are.
just have to ask
Yeah.
a question. Y'all, I have a story that Desmond told me. Does anybody remember when he drove a car that had OnStar in it?
Is this the
No.
car that he gave the Viking funeral to, or is that a different car?
I don't know. I just know that he was racing and the car had OnStar. And because the engine revved, it kept asking him if everything was all right. And he was getting angry. This woman kept coming on there asking him if everything was all right. Do I need to call 911? And he goes, shut up, you effing whore. That's what he said to her. I remember that story so vividly, and he told it so much better than I did. But I always
I never heard that one.
Yeah.
I heard that one.
Des was a great storyteller. Good timing, a good sense of rhythm. He was just a great storyteller. He loved it. His eyes would just light up. You could tell, and I'm about to get to the good part, you know?
Yeah.
I have one last story, then I'm going to stop. It's only because it was brought on by Drayton saying he pissed Desmond off while he was driving. That was almost an impossible thing to do because Desmond was so patient. As my mother passed away, Desmond flew up to Chattanooga where I was living. And he said, you know what? I'm going to teach you how to drive a 5-speed. I don't know what kind of car he was driving at the time, but he loaded me in his car. We went to this empty parking lot. I think it was a Winn-Dixie or something. And he got me in that seat and was teaching me the wonders of a 5-speed. And of course, I can't multitask. I can look straight ahead. Don't ask me to press down this and press down this and do this. He was so patient for the first hour. I just never could quite get it. We were a quarter into the hour. He said, pull over, just pull a fuck over. And I pulled over. I was messing with, just keep pressing till you find a natural place for it to let go, loose in your hand. I couldn't find a place where it was loose in my hand, and he took my hand off. And he parked the damn thing. He said, get the fuck out. Get the fuck out of my car. I have never lost my patience before. You are dangerous. If you not I speed. Listen, I told you that 2 hours ago. I don't have that capacity, but
Some people in 5 speeds just don't mix.
it was seriously, and I've never heard the word come out of his mouth so many times before. But I deserved each and every one of them. Yeah, I kind of ran his patience out the window. So that's my right now that's my story.
Interesting.
I was gonna add one time when we were working together at MSN Money, I mentioned that I kind of like the idea of buying a smart car, and he let me know that he didn't think that was a very good idea at all, and then he just kept bringing that up over
The
and
little
over.
smart card, the little dinky thing.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's right. And he kept bringing that up like every few months. He'd say, did you buy that smart car yet? Because he just kind of like it kind of stuck in his mind that why would someone want to buy that car? And then I noticed a few years later he worked on a story that um, he edited the story, but I'm sure he contributed a lot of the ideas to the story. But the story was called like the 10 most embarrassing cars to drive, and number one was the smart car. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, I just want to share one more little story and then I have to hop off too. But Des and Kimlo and I met for lunch one day when we were all working together. Kim and I both reported to Des. And so we met and at a restaurant kind of in the middle and chatted about work and so forth. And we're all leaving and we're going along towards our cars, and Des was parked a little bit farther from where I was, and we're coming up to where I was parked, and I had just gotten a car. I hadn't had one for a while because my car I had to leave at home with my mother-in-law who did all the school pickups and so forth. I had nothing, and then my mom moved to town, and she's like, I don't want to drive in Portland. You can have my car. I was very happy to have her car. So I'm explaining this. And we get up to where the car is, and Des looks at it, and it is a maroon Buick LeSabre. And he just goes, that works. And he was so clearly trying to find something that he could say about it that would be complimentary. There was nothing complimentary you could say about a maroon Buick LeSabre, but he was like, oh, that works. Okay, bye. He just went on his way. And yes, it was very, I think it kind of just hurt his soul to see that that's what I was driving around. But you know what? Hey, I drove the wheels off that thing and then I gave it to a kid. So it worked. But yeah, I have to hop off. Thank you so much for this event. It was really,
Kathy, thank you so much as well.
yeah, it was great to learn more about Des.
Well, check the chats when you get a chance, because people are posting links, recipes, and so forth. And also, I will update Desmond's blog page with whatever sieves out of this. If I can figure out a way to surface the actual Zoom call, I will put it on there for the hysterical record, and so that we can revisit it if we'd ever like. Anyone?
I just want to clarify
Oh,
something.
yes.
I didn't make Desmond scream out of anger. I made him scream out of fright. I was driving his S2000 up at White Horse in Jacksonville, Florida. No, White House, excuse me, old abandoned runway. And he told me to gas, gas, gas. So I did. And that car, you just steer with the throttle. I don't believe I touched the steering wheel the whole time. And he's screaming. And the picture that we're going to share on the webpage is him trying to do the equivalent thing to me on the track. So it's that screaming yellow S2000 that was one of the funnest cars ever to drive.
I can't wait to see it.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think I dropped what I think I have that picture. I posted a link to it in the chat there. So if anybody wants to pull it up, or is able to pull it up, it should be there.
Great, thank you.
In chat?
Yeah, see, red.
Yeah.
I gotta hop off too, but man, I still think about Des every day. And I don't know who to complain about work to anymore. Yeah, he was a great friend and an amazing person. So thanks for putting this together. It's really great to meet some of the people in his life that I hadn't met before.
Rick, it's been wonderful. Again, everyone who knew Des from their perspective, there's some completion in just this round around, hearing everyone else's perspective and insights and so forth. It just confirms
what we already knew.
Yeah. And loved about our brother, and we're going to miss him forever. And we're going to keep the best of him, because he would have wanted that. There was no doubt that he contributed to my mental and physical well-being over the years. He co-signed on 2 houses that I have bought. He was the co-borrower. I never exposed him to any liability, but that's a hell of a chance to take on even your brother. And you don't want anything from it, but yeah, I'll put my credit rating on the line for you. Boom. He did it twice. And, that kind of fealty in even familial circles is rare. And very unforgettable. Yes, Karen.
I just wondered if I could add something really quick, that about, we're talking about learning about Des, and, I feel like we talked a lot. We had a lot of phone calls, and, it'd be 15 minutes of work and then 45 minutes, we talk a lot. Yeah. And, but he really just moved the conversation, away from himself at times, unless it came up in a story. And I I sort of laugh now, because all 3 of these are lines from him, like after knowing him for years and years and years. He said, "Oh, well, you know that I do autocross, right?" "What's autocross?" And he said, oh, well, you know that I was the second car in a 50-car pileup, right? I'm like, no, or however many cars it was. And then the other one was, well, you know that I had testicular cancer, right? No. It just, anyway.
Yeah, I had many breakfast conversations or just hanging out with Des, and it was over 20 years, and little facts would get dropped along the way. I felt like this picture just sort of came together over time, right? And he would be surprised that he'd never mentioned that factoid before.
Interesting. Well, we've all learned something about Desmond from others' perspectives, and it's been a beautiful experience. It's too bad it ended this way because he was certainly taken way too soon. He never saw it coming. He died without a will. We are still grappling with the throes of probate in 2 states, trying to get his affairs settled. I have a pile of devices that are encrypted, password protected, not one of which I've been able to crack. So Desmond's digital life will probably never surface again. And the caveat here for me, since I don't even have a will and I've had one foot in the grave already, that's the next thing on my agenda, is make sure that my decedents, no, I'm the decedent, or my survivors can inherit what I have in this world without going through holy hell in probate and legal and so on and so forth. Word from the wiser and wiser to anyone who may not have a will, get one.
And I find it extremely telling that Desmond, the type of person he was, he didn't leave a will. Is that so unlike Desmond?
Either that or we never found it. But
he told me he didn't need one. I don't. He told me that several times. He said, I did this, this, and this, and so therefore I don't need a will. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
he was well aware of what he was doing, I guess. But
thanks, Des.
Well, we're figuring it out. Go ahead.
Who was getting Desmond's probate for the last 9 months. One of the things that I have found out, that nobody cares and nobody's willing to help you. The standard, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, is BS. And they make you jump through many hoops. So I preach to the choir now that if you think your affairs are in order, think again, because they're not. So like I said, it's an amazing process. We do have the Gulfport one closed, and Washington should be closed within a week. So we are on the tail end of this. Yeah. It's been a long journey, but we're all ready for it to end.
Yeah, all of our remaining memories of Des will be fond. And this was not of his own. He wouldn't have wanted anybody to suffer because of his lack of planning. But we've all learned something from this, that we go before, we're ready to go. And I think that's the sign of a life well lived, is that, well, that's the last thing you think about, is maybe today's a good day to die. Oh, well, what is that like? What does that feel like? Are my affairs in order? Well, I can say from my angle, no, they're not, but I'm working on it. Anything else? Ooh,
silence.
Well,
Thank you for putting this together.
My
Jay.
pleasure.
Thank
you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone has a link to Desmond's page that will go on, and there is my mother's page, and I'm actually collating her columns into a book that will be sold by the Mississippi Coast Audubon Society. She wrote over 1,800 columns, and her link is on Desmond's site. And because we're a family unit, we're going to glue up. Maybe after I die, somebody will write a blog page for me and glue it to my mother and my brother who preceded me. Anyway, thank you all so much. It was a beautiful experience.
Thank
2
you.
hours,
Thank you very
2
much.
hours and 10 minutes. None of us will get back in this life, but I think it was
Desmond's rolling his eyes as we speak.
rolling his eyes as we speak. And when I turn off my video, this scowl, that's him. That's the man. Anyway,
Had that up on his as his LinkedIn profile, and he left NerdWall, and he was asking people if they would write him recommendations from his LinkedIn. And I said, sure, I'll write you recommendations. So I wrote him a little recommendation. I said, but what is up with that photo?
Yeah.
I have another one of him with a little goatee and this kind of scowl on his face. I'll put that up as well. And
So that's the one he had on his LinkedIn. Yeah.
yes, and I see that you've Garrett, you've posted a link to just the one car, or was it a link to a gallery? I haven't gone there.
The one in the chat is just the S2000. I emailed you a couple of things as well.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
feel free to use those, in the blog post or anything else. So.
Okay, I would love to get copies of any articles, anything that he has authored over the years, and just to have them under, in some kind of a file. Never know. So anything you might come across, I would love to receive it. Everybody has my email address. So, anyone? Chuck, you've been quiet for hours.
I gotta go, but thank you, everybody.
Rick, thank you, sir. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you
No,
too.
no,
Good
this is
meeting you.
just wonderful. Thanks again so much. And I know there's several people who didn't make it on today, so really hope that you can put up the link to the video of this soon.
You bet. As soon as I can YouTube it, I will.
Great. Thanks again for organizing. Take care.
Pleasure. Thank you all. Everyone, God bless. Take care. Drink more water. Think great thoughts. And by all means, have a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.